Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something that's, well, it's pretty uncomfortable, especially if you think all your success is 100% earned. We're talking about the massive hidden role of randomness. The question we're really wrestling with is this: why do we keep mistaking luck for skill, especially in really high stakes fields like finance or, entrepreneurship?
It's the core human deception,
Yeah.
really. When you look at a super successful CEO or a billionaire investor, your first instinct is to see vision, strategy, pure intellect. But the truth, and this is laid out so brilliantly in Nassim Nicholas Taleb's Fooled by Randomness, is that a huge and honestly kind of terrifying portion of that is just chance.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to take that idea, that really challenging idea, and make it useful. We're going to use Taleb's framework to expose the cognitive traps that blind us to all this randomness, and more importantly, we'll try to figure out how to adopt a more resilient, a more probabilistic way of thinking to get through this unpredictable world.
And the stakes here are, I mean, they're incredibly high. Our brains are basically built for a simpler world. They're hardwired to look for a simple cause and a simple effect. So when we take that ancient pattern-seeking brain and drop it into something hyper-complex like the global markets, we just automatically get overconfident. We make decisions that completely ignore the real risks.
Okay, let's dive right into that core deception then. Taleb's whole argument is that so much of what we call brilliant strategy it's often just good timing.
Exactly. And the financial world is the perfect laboratory for this. Think about it. You've got these Wall Street traders who make a fortune, seemingly overnight. You interview them, and what do they say? They talk about their system, their unique insight, their gut feelings.
But if you look at the raw numbers,
Right. If you have 10,000 traders out there, just by pure statistical necessity, some of them have to get ridiculously lucky. They were just in the right place at the right time, maybe for years on end.
I love the coin flipping analogy he uses for this.
Yeah.
It's so clear. You put 10,000 people in a stadium, have them all flip a coin once a day for, say, a decade.
A small group of them is going to flip heads 10, 15 times in a row. It's statistically guaranteed to happen. And here's the critical part. When the media finds that person, the one who flipped heads 15 times straight, we don't say, wow, look at that statistical outlier.
No, we give them a book deal. We analyze their coin flipping technique.
Exactly. We publish their autobiography. They become living proof that their skills somehow dictated a purely random outcome.
And you'd never find a book deal for the person who flipped tails 15 times, even though their process was identical.
That's why the analogy works so well. It shows the huge difference in how we judge things depending on whether the environment is predictable or random. Take a weather forecaster. Their accuracy has gotten so much better over the decades. Why? Because weather, while it's super complex, is governed by physical laws we can actually model. Skill really can dominate luck there.
But then you look at, say, stock market analysts, people who are paid a lot of money for their predictions.
And the data shows, year after year, that most of them fail to beat a simple index fund. Some can't even beat, random picks, yet we still celebrate them as experts. It just shows how badly we want to believe that someone is in control.
And it's not just finance. I mean, if you're starting a business, the same thing applies. The founder who makes it big will credit their grit, their vision, but they might, gloss over the fact that their product happened to launch right when a pandemic created a sudden massive need for it.
Or their first big investor just happened to be their old college roommate. And look, Taleb's point isn't to say skill doesn't matter. It absolutely does. Skill and effort are necessary. But they're often not sufficient. The message is about humility. It's about acknowledging the limits of your own control. When you succeed, you have to mentally set aside a piece of that credit for just dumb luck.
That makes a lot of sense. So if luck is this huge, powerful force, why is it so hard for us to see it? Why are our brains constantly trying to, edit out the chaos?
And that leads us right into cognitive biases. Our brain's wiring for spotting patterns, which was great for, say, seeing a tiger in the grass.
Yeah.
It's a huge trap in the modern world. We're programmed to find meaning and cause, even when there's absolutely no connection.
I think the biggest one here has to be hindsight bias, the I knew it all along effect.
Oh, it's so corrosive, because it literally rebuilds the past in your mind. When some huge, unpredictable event happens, like a financial crisis, after the fact, it always looks obvious. People say, oh, the warning signs were everywhere. They just conveniently forget all the noise and uncertainty that actually existed at the time.
And if you think you saw it coming, you don't actually learn anything from it.
Precisely. It creates this illusion of predictability. If you believe the last crisis was obvious, you'll assume the next one will be too. But the defining feature of these events is that they are, by their nature, unpredictable shocks.
And that's fueled by what Taleb calls the narrative fallacy, this deep human need for a good story. We just can't handle pure chaos.
We can't. We have to have a clean plot line. So we create one. Think about the biography of any famous leader. The story is always so neat. She had a vision. She was daring. She persevered. That clean story just leaves out all the messy stuff, the lucky breaks, the market timing, the pure chance. We just prefer the good story over the complicated truth.
You see this constantly with CEOs, right? The stock price is soaring, they're a genius on the cover of Forbes, the stock tanks, and suddenly they're an idiot who needs to be fired.
And in both cases, the CEO gets way too much credit and way too much blame. If the market moves 20% because of some global event, that one person shouldn't get all the credit or all the blame. But our brains demand a simple answer. We need a hero or a villain. We're just not comfortable with the idea that sometimes nobody's really driving the bus.
That's a perfect setup for the next big trap. If we zoom out from the stories we tell ourselves, we get to survivorship bias. We only look at the winners.
Survivorship bias is, it might be the most dangerous one if you're trying to learn from the past. It's this habit of focusing only on the people or things that survived a process and completely ignoring all the ones that didn't.
Before we hit the business side, that classic World War II story just makes it so clear. The one about the airplanes.
Ah, yes, the analysis of the returning bombers. So during the war, the military wanted to add armor to their planes. They looked at the planes that made it back from missions, and they mapped out where all the bullet holes were. They saw the most damage was on the wings and the tail. So the obvious thought was,
Okay, so armor up the wings and tail, right?
well, that was the initial conclusion.
Yeah,
But a statistician named Abraham Wald pointed out that's exactly the wrong thing to do.
because you're only looking at the survivors.
You're only looking at the survivors. He said the armor needs to go where the bullet holes aren't, on the cockpit and the engines. Why? Because the planes that got hit there never made it back. They were the invisible failures.
That's such a powerful way to think about it. Now, apply that same logic to, say, tech startups. We put people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk on a pedestal. We dissect every single move they made.
We dissect the planes that made it back, but for every one of them, Taylor would say there were thousands of other entrepreneurs who failed. Many of them probably had similar strategies, maybe even better products. So we get this totally warped view of reality. It makes us overestimate our own chances of success if we just copy the winner.
And it's the same in finance. Everyone studies Warren Buffett's every move, but we don't study the thousands of other investors who used the exact same strategy and got wiped out.
Exactly. The distortion is profound.
Yeah.
And it stops you from learning the real lesson. You have to actively go looking for the failures. You have to study what didn't work to get the full picture.
Okay, so this is the big question. If we accept that randomness is everywhere and that our brains are built to fool us, what do we do about it? How do we actually make decisions in a world we can't predict?
Well, the very first step, the non-negotiable one, is tackling overconfidence. Overconfidence is what pours gasoline on the fire of randomness. It's what convinces an investor that all their wins are due to skill, which leads them to take on more and more and more risk. And then when that unpredictable event, that black swan, finally hits, their whole system just collapses.
You see this with big established companies all the time. They get so confident in what made them successful in the past.
Yeah, the classic examples are almost painful. You have Kodak, right?
Yeah.
They literally invented the digital camera, but they didn't embrace it because they were so overconfident in their film business. Or Microsoft, early on, dismissing the internet as just a fad. Their own past success blinded them.
So the answer then is to fight that bias by adopting a probabilistic mindset.
Exactly. It's about shifting from looking for one single outcome, the stock will hit $50, to thinking in ranges and probabilities. You have to accept that you can't be certain. So your mental model needs to look like a spread of possibilities, not one single dot on a chart.
Okay, that sounds good in theory, but what does that actually look like for someone making a decision?
It looks like serious stress testing. A probabilistic thinker doesn't just plan for the most likely outcome. They test their decisions against a whole range of worst-case scenarios. When you're building a portfolio, you don't just assume steady growth. You have to run scenarios to see if you can survive a sudden 30% drop without getting wiped out. It's about building for survival.
So shifting focus from maximizing your wins to just making sure you can't be totally destroyed by a bad outcome.
That's it exactly. And this leads to two really key principles. The first is something the poet Keats called negative capability. It's the ability to just sit with uncertainty, with mystery, without rushing to find a simple, comfortable answer. It's the antidote to that narrative fallacy.
So instead of forcing a story onto the chaos, you just admit that you don't know, and that's okay.
And that admission is so powerful because it lets you use the second concept, optionality. Optionality is all about setting yourself up so that you have a limited known downside, but a massive, almost unlimited upside.
That sounds like the holy grail. How does a person actually do that?
Think of it as making lots of small, smart bets. Optionality is about asymmetry. If you can structure a deal where the most you can possibly lose is small, say $100, but the potential gain is huge, $10,000 or more, you're using optionality. You're protected from the bad kind of randomness because your loss is capped, but you're wide open to benefit from a lucky break.
So instead of one big confident bet, you make a bunch of small, cheap, strategic bets. That way you can catch any lucky wave that comes along. It sounds like being built to actually thrive on volatility, not just survive it.
That's the goal. To be, as Taleb calls it, anti-fragile. By admitting we don't know everything, we create a culture of questioning, of skepticism, of humility. And it's not about giving up on strategy. It's about making our strategy strong enough to handle reality.
Which brings us all the way back around. Embracing randomness really means. It means having humility when you win because you know luck played a part. It means having resilience when you fail because you know it might have just been a bad draw. And maybe most of all, it means focusing on the quality of your decision-making process, not just the short-term lucky or unlucky result.
And the final payoff of thinking this way is huge. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable future, you free up all this energy. Energy you can then use to position yourself to adapt and to benefit from whatever the future throws at you, instead of being destroyed by it. It's about being ready for anything.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you to take with you this week. If success is so heavily influenced by chance, what's a better measure of a good decision? Is it the positive outcome it created? Or is it the quality of the thinking that went into it, knowing full well that the outcome could have easily gone the other way? And how can you use that idea to structure your next tough decision so that it has the most optionality, very little to lose, and everything to gain?